Yes, I am.
Thank you for joining the Dougherty County Board of Commissioners Commission meeting. Your Dougherty County Board of Commissioners is chaired by Christopher Cohelis. Your Dougherty County Commissioners include, from District 1, Lamar Hudgens; from District 2, Victor Edwards; from District 3, Clinton Johnson; from District 4, Russell Gray; from District 5, Gloria Gaines; and from District 6, Anthony Jones. We are also joined by County Administrator Michael McCoy, Assistant County Administrator Scott Addison, County Clerk Juwan Ware, and County Attorney Spencer Lee. This is your Dougherty County Board of Commissioners Commission meeting.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, let's go ahead and call to order the Dougherty County Commission work session for January 11th, 2021. Let's begin with the roll call. And Madam Clerk, I note that for the record, Commissioners Newsom, Edwards, Johnson, and Gray, and Chairman Cohelis are present. I'm now going to sound for those commissioners that are appearing virtually. Commissioner Gaines?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Jones?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How you doing?
You're doing very well. Thank you, my friend. All right, let's move on to delegations. This is where the Commission will hear comments of those items pertaining to Dougherty County for which a public hearing has not been held or scheduled. We ask everyone to be brief and to the point and considerate of time for others. Do we have any delegations that did not previously sign up that wish to be heard at this time? There being none, we'll move on. Purchases. Recommendation to accept the proposal in the amount of $38,750 from Maschke Associates to provide architectural and engineering services needed to develop a Dougherty County morgue. Funding is available in SPLOST 7. Mr. Addison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Warner has been utilizing Phoebe's morgue, and in SPLOST 7, we set aside funding to build one, a county morgue for the coroner, and Mr. Maschke would provide architectural and engineering services for the development of this morgue. We recommend approval.
Okay, very good. Any comments, questions, or discussion?
Here, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Gaines?
I heard Mr. Addison say that the funds were set aside. Was the project listed in specifically in Block 7? That's the first question. And
Yes, ma'am.
The second question is this a sole source contract? And the third question is, how are we handling this function today?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. This was a specific project in SPLOST 7 listed on the referendum. And this is a professional service, and Mr. Maschke has done a lot of work out for the county, so we recommend you utilize him. And third question is the coroner is using Phoebe's morgue presently.
Well, I remember some time back we addressed the question of the morgue, and I just don't remember what the question was and what the resolution was.
Commissioner Gaines, I missed that. I missed your question there. It sounded like part of a trailer.
Some time ago, that last question about us addressing this issue before.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we did, but I just don't remember. I thought we had moved it out of Phoebe before. I don't know.
No, we had not, and for the record, the coroner is present too. Mr. Fowler, could you come forward and give us some information? That would be very helpful. Good morning, Mr. Fowler.
Good morning. What we did first part of the year, we had the mobile morgue come down for the COVID virus. We never did stop using Phoebe.
Right.
We ran out of room, and we ordered a morgue to come in for the substitute for the time and space that we did not have.
Yes, sir. And Commissioner Gaines, just to reiterate in case you couldn't hear, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, the number of deceased citizens that we had was more than our capability of storing at Phoebe, and we actually had to order a mobile morgue from the Georgia Emergency Management Agency. We were able to store additional bodies there as an interim measure. But this has been this was a long-term project. Yes, ma'am. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, apparently I thought we made this decision sometime back because we were using Phoebe's morgue. Anyway, obviously I'm not correct.
I think you are. I think you are correct in, and what I think that you're recalling are our discussions regarding why we were placing the morgue in SPLOST 7 because of some factors that we discussed back then. I don't think you're incorrect at all. I think your memory is very good.
Okay. Now the total amount listed here is $38,750. We don't normally list the travel reimbursements, I take it.
Say that one more time.
The travel reimbursement amount list is about $6,000. We don't include that in the cost of the project, huh?
It's on the back. What page? It's on the back of the contract.
I'm not sure. Travel reimbursements, I don't see that.
It's on the back of Mr. Maskey's contract item for page 8. Page 8, the back of page 8. Yeah.
I see that, Commissioner Gaines.
If that is not the normal practice, then well and good.
I read that a little bit differently. I see that as estimated reimbursable expenses budget, which would be, materials, what have you, I guess. It does include travel. I don't know the answer to that. Mr. Addison, is that something that, costs and expenses usually are a component of any professional contract. Is that standard?
We do pay for time for consultants and travel. We
Right.
do.
I can't imagine there's going to be too much travel, given that Mr. Maskey is, last I checked, was still a resident of Daugherty County. Mr. Maskey, if you would.
Well, I'm just curious if it's standard practice to list it as part of the cost involved.
Okay. Mr. Maskey?
Yeah, on page 7.
We have traditionally always handled reimbursable expenses as a separate line item on all our contracts, not just with the county, but all clients, because reimbursable expenses is just a budgeted item. It depends on how, and it's not just for travel. As a matter of fact, in-town or in Daugherty County travel, as noted there, is not charged.
Sure.
Only out-of-town travel, if perhaps you need us to go look at an out-of-town morgue or two or something to go speak to other people.
Sure.
Everything else that's listed there are standard reimbursable expenses like reproduction of drawings. We don't know if you're going to want 6 sets or 25 sets or no sets.
Sure.
Postage, shipping, those sorts of things. If there's needing to have documents sent off to the state, or if you want to send somebody out of state or out of town for review, those sorts of things.
Sure.
So we set up a budget. It may well be $1,000. It may be $4,000. It's just unknown at this time.
But it's not part of the contract.
It's not part of the
$38,750, and I think that's what Commissioner Gaines' question is that.
Traditionally, it's not part of the contract that you give us.
But you did provide an estimate just to be safe, so
And
that
that's
it didn't look.
typically attached to the contract as an estimate.
Yes.
That really depends very much on what the county wants.
Sure. Understood.
Yeah, and that's what I'm aware of that. I'm just asking if we do it on our end, if we include it as a part of the cost as a standard practice.
In terms of budgeting?
In terms of approval.
Oh,
I think most proposals that are given to us for consideration have that type of budget estimate in it, generally those expenses are not above and beyond the budget for the scope of work it's included in.
I think I understand what Commissioner Gaines is saying. Does our approval encompass approval of the proposed budget expense?
Yeah.
And I would say that it doesn't as written in this agenda item, but it is good information for us. And thankful to Mr. Maskey for providing a reasonable estimate of what those costs and expenses are. But Mr. Addison, am I correct that given the low amount
I
of
mean,
the...
it's a question they could, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, it's a question they could answer later, or we could observe later.
Yes, ma'am.
If it is a standard practice to include it as a part of the cost for approval.
I believe if we were expecting that to be a significant cost and to actually incur that, yes, but with this project, we have not given any specific directives for out-of-town travel, and we may not include that, may not be needed. But if we expected that there was a consultant that had to go out of town for work, then we would include that in the price.
He said in the proposal that he is likely to have to visit other morgues.
May not have come through very well in the transmission. I think he was just giving that as an example of what could be an expense, and it was also dictated by the wishes of the county. So I think that was the spirit in which he was offering his comments, Commissioner Gaines.
Mr. Chairman, it's also the expenses are reimbursed at cost plus 25% according to the proposal. So we will receive the expenses as they come in, and we can certainly control that if there's any type of egregious or questionable expenses throughout a project like this and any other. So it's not a blank check to go do what you need to do on the county's dime.
All right, very good. Commissioner Gaines, does that address your questions?
Not entirely, but I can talk to them later. It's just that I'm just trying to find out what we customarily do. And
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Addison spoke to it partially.
Okay.
Apparently saying if he felt the need to list it, but it should seem to me it should be some standard practice associated with this.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on that item? All right, we'll move on. Recommendation to accept the proposal.
One question real quick, Mr. Chairman. Given the fact that Daugherty County is really kind of the hub of Southwest Georgia, especially with the home base operations regionally for GBI and other state law enforcement agencies. Would it be prudent to have a conversation with them as we look at designing a morgue and see if they would like to partner and maybe fund a portion of it that could be part of a crime lab network, so that we could bring those into a more central location?
That's a good idea.
I would, I've shared some of those thoughts privately before. I am curious as to what the GBI's budget is going to look like in this upcoming year. I also, frankly, another thought that I had, and I think that would be a good thing for us to have as a discussion point, is whether or not there's potential revenue that could be received from other counties and other coroners by virtue of having a large first-class facility, because typically those services are contracted out with funeral homes around the area. And I see Mr. Fowler's nodding his head. Mr. Fowler, are those some discussions that you can look into for us?
I agree with what you were saying. I think it's very important. Since we're in Southwest Georgia, a lot of coroners and they depend on us, especially during a disaster. We kind of like a central location, so have a more large enough that if they need to use it, keep a person over from Friday to Monday or to Tuesday to go to the crime lab, we can have like a rental fee like be doing us.
I
Yeah.
think that's a good point.
Mr.
Very
Chairman,
good point.
while
Yeah.
we're Ms. Fowler up still, Ms. Fowler, you and I had a conversation about medical examiner office or some kind of crime lab. How does this fit back into that?
Well, the GBI person, I don't think they person may not be able to come do anything here per se unless, like I said, a disaster. They came down, I know, during the time of one of the smaller floods, and we got a location that we did use. But I think you probably can use something like that in the disaster, because the GBI lab now, we got remains right now waiting to go to the crime lab. They are backed up. They don't have nowhere to store the remains. So we can be a central location that they can store individuals here until they be able to get them transported up to Atlanta to Macon. So I think it's going to be a revenue thing that we can use, I believe.
Very good. All right. Excellent. Thank you. All right. I'm going to move on to the next item. Recommendation to accept the proposals from Stones Aquatic Weed and Algae Removal LLC in the amount of $55,800 for the enhancement of Radium Springs and the Spring Run Creek by removing aquatic vegetation. Funding is available in SPLOST 5. Mr. Addison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In late 2019, early 2020, the Recreation Committee was looking at Radium Springs master plans and improvements. And one of the key portions of that was enhancing the springs and, trying to make them look better and clean them out. And during the Recreation Committee in November, we had Mr. Rob Weller from DNR and the Flint Riverkeeper, Mr. Gordon Rogers, come in, and we talked about the different methods for cleaning out the invasive hydrilla. And the one that they recommended us to try in the first place was mechanical clean out. And this is a vendor that specializes in mechanical clean out of lakes, ponds, streams. And this contract would cover cleaning out the whole spring area and the creek all the way to the bridge. And with the idea being is the first time we do this, we get as much out as we can. And in the future, there may be some more maintenance events, but we hope that this will knock it back and keep it from being so aggressive in there.
Understood. Any comments, questions, or discussion on that item?
I do have one.
Yes. Commissioner
Mr.
Gray?
Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Jones?
We're talking about this aquatic cleaning up here. I understand that you're going to try to get this hydrilla, but I think you need to go back and revisit that contract because of the fact that this is not going to be a one-shot deal. You're going to have a maintenance program on that stuff so that when it starts showing its head again, you need to be able to zap it, because it's just like kudzu. It don't ever go away. It's just like a cancer. It'll go away for a while and it'll go into remission, but it's coming back.
Yes, sir. Mr. Addison?
With a vengeance when it comes back.
Yes, sir. There, we know that it will come back somewhat, but we hope that if we get most of it out the first time, that those maintenance events will be less intrusive and less expensive if we get it on a schedule like that. But we don't know what that's going to look like yet, how fast it's going to come back.
Sure.
Well, it's coming back. It's not going to be gone that long. I'm just telling you, that's my area there. So I'm just letting you know so that
Yes, sir.
the best thing for you to do is try to go ahead and get a maintenance agreement with this particular $55,000, because it's easier to negotiate one now when it's not there than to have those folks to come back.
Yes, sir. Very good point. Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Gray, then Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, 2 points, Mr. Chairman. First, under the vendor's objective statement, it says restoration of park waterways and to remove aquatic vegetation and weeds from Blue Hole to first cypress tree laying in the water. Is the intent to clean it all the way to the bridge, or is it actually to the first cypress tree laying in the water, i.e. their equipment can't get over it and continue cleaning? There's no way to get the equipment into the tailwaters of Skywater Creek to clean the rest of it. So, if this bid is just for that distance, and our intention is to clean it all the way to the bridge, that we may have some unforeseen costs with the extra distance that they're having to go. And I know DNR and state laws won't allow us to pull those trees out of the creek. Second, and I do agree with the consideration of the maintenance costs. At one point, we had talked about looking at an aquatic herbicide drip system that would, go and produce enough of a herbicide content on a constant basis to suppress the weed regrowth. And I think it would be a good time to look at a parallel bid with this to see if maybe by summer, we could have at least line of sight on a system like that and how effective it would be versus a little bit of spend every now and then for some mechanical weed removal as the regrowth comes back. Because once we remove these weeds, it'll change the flow pattern and of the tailwaters themselves. So it'll actually help prevent some of the weed regrowth, but we may have problems in other areas. Just don't know what the long-term costs are going to be.
Okay, yes, sir. There are two separate quotes here. If you're looking, one of them is for the springs and one of them is for the creek. So we add those together, and we own lots further down the creek that we would use to pull that material off. So we do have access. We've used it before. I've spoken with Public Works, and they're going to assist with the load out and haul off of the material to save that money. The reason why we're bringing the mechanical only portion to you was at the meeting with Mr. Weller and Mr. Rogers. They recommended that we start off with the mechanical treatment, mechanical option, because with the flows, they weren't sure that the chemical, treatment was going to work well at all. And they recommended us to start here and, seeing what this would do and how long it would take to come back. And it may be the best option.
So these two
Mr.
quotes
Chairman.
added together are $88,350.
To highlight it. Just to highlight that thing.
I'm sorry?
These two quotes added together are $88,350.
We're not going to
Just
pay
to highlight
for the mini excavator or the hauling fees.
Oh, okay, so just the 36, the 19.8 and the 36. Okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Jones.
I suggest before we move forward with this that we bring in the University of Georgia aquatic specialists who deal in this stuff every day, and they can give us an intelligent decision as to what we need to do for this at a cost of zero. I think it's better to do that than to throw good money after bad money. I know the company probably is a reputable company, but companies do sell their product. But I'd like to get an independent decision, and the University of Georgia aquatic specialists would be able to do that for us before we move forward, going into a contract.
Mr. Addison, what are your thoughts?
I don't see it's always good to have another opinion, another, set of eyes look at something. The one thing that is advantageous to go ahead and do this now is, they recommend we do this in the winter time when it's not actively producing seeds, I guess, if you will, so that when we clean it out, maybe it won't come back as fast. That's why we're looking at this time of year. But
could we at least get, to Commissioner Jones's point, maybe solicit an informal opinion or some informal advice from the UGA, whichever group that he referenced? I think
They're
that's...
aquatic specialists.
Yes, sir. But I think that would, from what I understand, this group has got a unique product and they've been doing a good job for other folks around town, but I think that Commissioner Jones raises a good point. I will say this, I'm ready to get the darn weeds out of the springs, and get it cleaned up. And, you know, from my well, let me break it down this way. The way I see this project is two components. One, get the trash out of the springs. Step two, have a system that prevents too many weeds from growing in the springs on a forward-moving basis. You can't get to two without one, because you got to have a major cleanup, and the cleanup price seems reasonable to me. But I mean, I'm happy with having a consultation, whether it's formal or informal, to get some additional advice. But I would like for us to.
Mr. Chairman, may
yes.
I add to that point?
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
At our Recreation Committee meeting, we discussed that, and I think Mr. Weller from DNR made some points, about what had happened in Thomasville, what had happened in other areas he worked in with the hydrilla. And I think the biggest thing is having that Gordon Rogers Flint River piece in, because they talked about on an ongoing basis just getting in the water and the equipment, just pulling weeds out by hand. And so I want to make sure we keep them at the table, because that's probably going to be one of our best resources in keeping the weeds down, because they want to get in the river, get in the springs, and actually pull it out without bringing another excavator. So this will give them a good lead on the weeds, and then they can kind of keep it up on an ongoing basis during the keep the river clean, Flint River Keepers and keeping it clean projects, and also KADB. So I think we've done a lot of the research, but we can still get a second opinion. I'm not against that, but I do want us to go ahead and move forward with trying to get this stuff out of the water while it's still cold.
I'd propose,
Well,
Mr.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Gaines?
yeah, it appears to me, since we won't be voting on this for 2 weeks, that at least a phone call can be made to discuss this with the University of Georgia's aquatic specialist, if he's willing to just do a phone consultation on it.
Yep.
And they could probably do that, because that's what they do day in and day out. I mean, we're not going to take a year or 6 months to get an answer from the University of Georgia. You can call 1-800-ASK-UGA and get that information over the phone. I mean, we just want to make sure, because see, I know in Russell, Commissioner Gray, he's a wildlife specialist. I mean, so, and I'm an ag man, so I mean, the 2 points that we're trying to make is just to save us on the other end, because I know when you call in someone to come in to treat with the herbicide, they don't come in cheap. So if we can get it on the front end, it's kind of like the IRS: you pay now, you pay later. So we need to pay now and not later, because it's going to cost us more.
All right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gray?
Just, I guess, kind of with all due respect, we've had what I would consider an agent of the state of Georgia with the Department of Natural Resources give us his feedback, and that comes from being educated on what these issues are and the science behind it, and also what the
DNR,
yeah,
Mr.
Rob Weller.
I think that was a fact that we probably didn't understand when we were first talking about this. But
Yeah.
if we could, Mr. Addison, I think to your point, Mr. Addison, if you could get the information about what Mr. Weller said and populate it amongst the commission, and if anyone wants some additional follow-up in light of that information which you pass along, and I think that can be distributed via email. We've got 2 weeks to work with it. If we need to have an additional phone call with UGA, Yale University, NASA, or whoever, we can get that done I think in 2 weeks. But
Well, I would definitely submit that if there's anybody in this community who has the breadth of knowledge on this, irregardless of their position on the science or politics, it would be Gordon Rogers. And there's no one more passionate about the aquatic ecosystem of the Flint River Basin and all of its tributaries, and probably nobody as widely scholared in the nuances of managing those spring sheds as well as the river itself. His stamp of approval, I think, on a project like this, and his recommendation that mechanical removal be used first pass is more than adequate in my book to move forward without having to hear validation from other sources, of which they have, Rob Weller and Gordon Rogers have already read and weighed the information and kind of made judgment on it. So if you want to wait, we can, but I think we're kind of losing cold weather too. And there is a reproduction cycle of hydrilla that starts pretty aggressively in the spring. So the more cold water you can expose it to in cold weather and remove it during its dormant cycle, the more effective this will be. So.
Mr. Chairman, I want to add something to go back to, I agree with everybody what they were saying, but I think one thing that Commissioner Gray was saying also from that committee meeting was that once we do it, drag it and clean it, we did need to implement a drip system. And I guess I'm going back to what the chairman said. I want to see us put together a scheduled plan of how we going to achieve our objective, like an opening date, and not necessarily saying an opening date, but like the chairman said, if one is going to be dragging it, two is going to be the drip system. We have the money from the federal, from the state on how we're going to develop the dam. So I guess I'm looking for how you going to get me to the end. So if you guys can come up with something, or you want us to, I guess I'll submit myself to the chairman, the rec chairman, of coming back together, because I want to see where we going. Like, I know once we drag it in the wintertime, Mr. Rogers and Mr. Weller agreed that we needed a drip system, and that would decrease the growth of the vegetation of the hydrilla. So again, but I want us to kind of go 1, 2, 3, and I know we're not going to hit the mark every time 1, 2, 3, but that would give me, I guess, a direction, like where we going to end up in 2022.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to
Okay.
take a point of privilege from the position of the chairman. I'm going to ask that the Recreation Committee come to the next commission meeting where we plan to vote on this matter, and also make a simultaneous report after working with staff to make recommendations relative to what a maintenance schedule would look like, and also to wrap its arms around whether or not it's making a recommendation that we proceed forward with the purchase of the $55,800 in services, whether or not the affirmations that we have from DNR, Gordon Rogers, et cetera, are sufficient to satisfy the concerns that have been raised here today. And we're going to move on to additional business.
Consider it done.
All right, recommendation to accept the list of roads to be resurfaced with the fiscal year 2021 local maintenance and improvements grant LMIG funds, $380,125.25, SPLOST 7 2021 resurfacing funds, $425,000, and T-SPLOST $2,149,249.93. A total cost estimate for 25.95 miles is $2,954,375.18. Mr. Addison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our annual program with our matching funds from SPLOST 7 and T-SPLOST. We recommend approval.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? There being none, we'll move on. Recommendation for Daugherty
Yeah,
County.
one minor one, please.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Gaines.
Yes, I believe at least half of 8 Mile Road is in District 5, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just,
I think that's correct.
yeah,
Okay.
okay, just make that minor correction, please.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Thank you. Recommendation for Daugherty County to provide approval to submit applications for CDBG MIT planning funds and CDBG MIT infrastructure funding. Disaster Programs Manager Georgia Collier Bowling will address. Planning Development Code Enforcement Representative Angel Gray is present as well. This item is listed on, it will be listed on the following special called meeting. Good morning, Ms. Collier Bowling.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great this morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yes, sir. We're recommending approval and acceptance to submit applications for the CDBG MIT Planning Fund and the CDBG MIT Infrastructure Fund.
All right. Any comments, questions, or discussion on that item?
What is the CDBG MIT infrastructure program? What is that?
Yes, sir. It's, for the, for the CDBG infrastructure funding, it will address, we will be submitting an application to the state, for the award they got under CDBG, disaster, for infrastructure projects that will alleviate, and mitigate, flooding, in our 31701, 31705, and 31707, both impacted districts. And the CDBG mix planning, that will be for the planning application, which we're looking at a project with the city of Albany for countywide assessment of properties that have been damaged, that were damaged during the storms and the flooding. So we can assess those properties and find out what will be needed to bring them up to code, and then the next step after that.
So this is hazard mitigation, part of the CDBG, where you put in the drainage or the loud voice towers for storm kind of thing. This is the mitigation part of it.
Well, hazard mitigation is that's under HMGP, so it's a different, that's under FEMA. This is actually under HUD, and it's a part of the state of Georgia DPA got 26 million some change for infrastructure funding. And so an allocation for a portion of that has been made, and we will have to submit application, Doherty County and the city will, be submitting together along with Brunswick and Kingston for mitigation, which will, again, just like similar to hazard mitigation under HMGP, in that it'll deal with drainage, culverts, things of that nature, on the infrastructure side. And Jeremy and I have been working together on some projects that could accommodate that, possibly some that we had already projected that we could move in, along with projects that the city has. The city of Albany has some larger projects that we would like to, put on the application and actually do a multi-activity application that would involve drainage and sewer issues inside the city limits, and then projects that Jeremy would recommend he and I look at together from out in the unincorporated side area of the county.
Will we see a list of the projects, Ms. Carrie-Bolling?
Typically, just like we did with the acquisition, so we had to submit applications for acquisition funding as well. And we go in and we do the applications, and we submit the application to the state, because we've got a deadline to do the application. But that's I guess that's the decision that you all would make. Previously, when we did for example, with acquisition for the acquisition program on the CDBG unmet needs, we just completed the application and submitted it just like we did the pre-application to get to this point.
Yes, you'll see the project.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Collier-Bolling.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. McCoy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In observance of the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday, January 18, 2021, there will not be a scheduled meeting held, and the County Commission annual retreat is scheduled for Friday, January 22nd, 2021 in Veterans State Park.
All right, very good. Mr. Lee.
No updates, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Newsom.
Not a thing, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gray.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. In light of our recent events on last week, I would like for us to observe a moment of silence for those lives that were lost at the Capitol. I don't know if it's one to do it now or before our next meeting, but just to acknowledge the loss.
Thank you.
It's on you to call it, but I'd like to do that.
Commissioner Edwards.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Gaines.
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jones.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Have a good week, sir.
Very good. We're adjourned. Correct. And call to order the Daugherty County Commission Special Call Meeting for January 11, 2021. Madam Clerk will note that Commissioners Newsom, Edwards, Johnson, Gray, Gaines, and Jones are all present. Commissioner Gaines and Jones are present virtually. We have additional business. Consider for action the recommendation to accept a list of roads to be resurfaced for the fiscal year 2021 local maintenance and improvements grant LMIG funds, $380,125.25. SPOS 7, 2021 resurfacing funds, $425,000, and T-SPOS, $2,149,249.93. The total cost estimate for 25.95 miles is $2,954,375.18. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, call the matter for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consider for action the resolution providing for the submittal of applications for CDBG, MIT planning funds, and CDBG, MIT infrastructure funding. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, we'll call the matter for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're adjourned.